in that regard as it relates to that.
So you did have a report in July, though?
I don't remember when you asked when the request came in. I'd have to defer to Mr. Reed, my PIO, but we had the results shortly after Sheriff Chitwood received them. So if you were with Sheriff Chitwood and you know that they were there and they had them, it wasn't long after the sheriff received them that my office received them. So.
Just go over the basics real quick, make sure I have it. So what is the name of the charge?
It is, the name of the charge is, the act is the Dangerous Dog Act. It's 767. The charge is owning or having a dog that wasn't previously declared dangerous by Florida statutes that causes great bodily harm or death to a human being.
And how old is that law?
That law has been in the, I couldn't tell you when it was passed, but it's been a number of years.
And then this new law you referred to with Sheriff Chitwood is called the
It's the PAMROC Act.
Does not apply.
It does not apply, and it was really an amendment to the Dangerous Dog Act. There were changes. The needle was moved on some things. It included whether or not the animals are properly confined. It included some civil ramifications, civil penalties, meaning like a traffic ticket or something like that has a civil penalty and it's not a criminal penalty. There are fines associated with. There's mandatory insurance obligations for homeowners. If they have a dog that has previously been declared dangerous, they have to have a certain insurance policy if they have that dog in their home. Things like that were changed.
And because that went into effect after this happened.
Yeah, we can't apply it to.
Well, based on your answer to Demi's question, we were told in the beginning there's 2 owners, 2 dogs. How did you determine who was going to be charged?
Amanda Franco owns the one dog, and Brandy Hodel owns the other dog. There was facts and circumstances surrounding the ownership and knowledge that we can prove is imputed on Miss Franco as it relates to her dog that we cannot prove as it relates to Brandy's dog.
We heard that there were some messages on maybe social media that were deleted by Amanda Franco. Why are you not able to charge her with tampering with evidence?
I'm not going to comment on the specific facts of any evidence and what information we are or are not reviewing at this time in that regard.
Why wouldn't this not fall under something like negligent homicide or negligent manslaughter?
Thank you for that question. The manslaughter, there's a case that discusses this, and I don't have the site in front of me, but prosecutors have discretion to charge cases based on what the facts and circumstances support. In order to prove negligent homicide, which would be a manslaughter type charge, we'd have to prove that the owner of the dog knew that their dog being out would cause death to another human being. And that knowledge is based on prior conduct, prior information, and things of that nature as it relates to both the dog and the dog owner. And there was not sufficient evidence available for me to charge them.
If you ask any neighbor within a 5-mile radius of that house, they will testify stating the fact that they actually had to either want to shoot the dog or chase the dog away from either their animals, their other dogs, and the kids.
And I would say to you, and I would say to those neighbors, please don't suffer in silence. You need to contact local law enforcement. You need to contact animal services and report those animals so that they can be declared dangerous dogs. They're documented, and the owners of those dogs are put on notice that their dog is likely to cause death or great bodily harm if it's left out of their home. That did not happen in this case.
So we just want to know what took so long, because they literally handed you the case. What took this many months? The family claimed, why is this taking so long? What took so long?
This was a very thorough and complete and emotional review of these files. We don't make filing decisions based on emotion. We don't make filing decisions based on public pressure, comment, or because someone says we should. We make them based on the law. There was a lot of research that was done in this case. There was a lot of conversations with very experienced lawyers, including some capital appeals lawyers from the Attorney General's office, to see what we could and couldn't charge, and if there were ways that we could make or see if different things could fit. And unfortunately, that research led us to where we are today, that there just aren't laws on the book in Florida, and there are no court case law interpreting the current laws on the books in Florida that allow for a different charge.
It seems like a slap in the boy's face in a sense, even dog kills him and they get missing. I mean, what would you say to, I mean, you say the dangerous dog be on notice and everything like that, but is this speaking louder than words that you can have a dangerous dog and get away with it?
I don't think it does that. I think what it does is it tells people in the community that if you experience an interaction with a dog that is out in your neighborhood and that appears to be dangerous to you or your children, you need to call law enforcement. You need to call animal services. You need to do those things so that that information can be put on someone. As the law stands, having a dog and having that dog get out without any knowledge on the owner or any knowledge that the state can prove that that dog presents a danger to someone that's likely to cause death or great bodily harm, there's nothing that can be done beyond the laws that are there. Unfortunately, that's what the law is. It's not a per se, if your dog gets out and kills someone, that you're guilty of murder or manslaughter in the state of Florida. That's not the law.
State of Florida, you give this to me.
If we can prove that it's reckless and that you were on notice of the dog's dangerous propensities, yes.
But if they wasn't on notice and it happened, I'm just theoretically, would it be the same case as this, correct?
Right. So there are routinely, and I believe recently here in Volusia County, another dog that killed a small child. Sometimes these unfortunate, terrible things occur, and it's not always criminal. And that's what I'm trying to make sure that I convey in the most sensitive way possible, because this is terrible. It is tragic, and the criminal conduct that I can charge, I have charged, and there's nothing else on the books for me to do with this other than this charge as it relates to the death of Michael. Probably one of the hardest conversations I had in my career was yesterday afternoon. So.
Do people report anonymously when they report a dog issue?
Sure. So what can happen is if someone reports their dog, that this dog is out in the neighborhood, and they contact Animal Control Services, who are present in the room somewhere, I saw them earlier, they'll come out, they'll identify where the dogs are from, who the owners are, and hopefully they'll create a documentation of that dog, that this dog has done something, and they're going to contact and notify the owners. One of the changes to the Dangerous Dog Act was the immediate confiscation of dogs that are involved in violent altercations and things of that nature. So it puts the onus on law enforcement, it puts the onus on the Animal Control Services to convey that information to the owners of these dogs. And certainly, you do something once, it can be a mistake. You do it twice, okay, maybe you messed up twice, but if it's a pattern and your dogs are dangerous, the law should afford a different charge. And currently, it doesn't. It just doesn't.
So even going forward, if this, something like this were to happen again, there's still not enough in the law to.
If a dog or an animal shows enough dangerous propensities, and I can prove that that owner is on notice of those dangerous propensities, then a manslaughter charge could potentially fit.
Kind of based on all this, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We saw you going up to Tallahassee for the Pan Rock Act. Have you heard from Senator Wright? Anybody like this about trying to create something going forward, kind of based on?
I don't want to speak for the state attorney, but in speaking with him, we are going to join forces to go back to the legislature and say, hey, thank you for what you did with the Pam Rock Act, but this doesn't go far enough. Legally, what the legislature can do or can't do, we're going to find out. And I think that's where the viewers come into play. If you're as appalled as everybody else is, the man's following, he's doing what he has to do. There were 0 911 calls. There were 0 reports filed with the sheriff's office. There were 0 reports filed with animal control. We went out and did interviews. Everybody told us all these stories. He can't use that. So this is a case where I would implore people to contact your elected representatives in the House and the State House and the State Senate and tell them something needs to be done. That Michael, his life was more than a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree. But the only way that's going to happen is if Tallahassee changes the law. And I am thankful to the state attorney. We knew going in here that the odds were against ever seeing a felony charge. It just wasn't in the law. But the fact that they took the time to research and say, this is the best that we could do, nobody likes it, but it's the best that the man in his office can do, and he puts so much attention and effort into this because it strikes everybody. If you have a heartbeat, you have to say, this isn't right. But the law has to catch up, and the way the law catches up is in Tallahassee. And again, I would implore people, contact your representatives, contact your senators, and say this has to change because it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again.
What was the mother's reaction?
The same as yours, the same as others that are probably watching at home, that second-degree misdemeanor is not enough. I'll leave it at it's probably the hardest conversation I've had in my career, was talking to that family yesterday.
People say why we didn't call in and report the issues.
No. I'm not going to get into the specifics of everyone. I'm not going to get into specifics of all of it. I think that it's probably a combination of a number of things that include they don't know where the dogs came from. They don't know where they were. I don't believe that this family had ever seen those dogs before.
Can you tell us anything about how the two women knew each other, what was going on inside the house, and maybe kind of what led up to the dogs getting out that day?
How Miss Franco and Miss Hodel know each other? They were roommates. They lived in the house together. Regarding how they got out or didn't get out of the yard, I'm not going to comment on the evidence that supports or doesn't support those types of things. That'll come out in discovery when that stuff is filed, ultimately. Yeah. So the second-degree misdemeanor is the lowest charge that can be filed in Florida. It's punishable by up to 60 days in jail or 6 months of supervision or a $500 fine. That supervision can include any number of penalties that a court deems appropriate. Those will be discretionary issues for the court to have to consider at some point, should she be found guilty.
Aside from the law change and people calling in, is there anything else that possibly could be done now to help prevent something like this from happening again?
And I think it's exactly what, I said previously and what Sheriff Chitwood said is that, people, neighbors, communities shouldn't suffer in silence if there are dogs or animals or behavior happening that is unsafe or dangerous. Contact law enforcement. There are anonymous lines. There are any number of ways that information can be conveyed to law enforcement. They can do something. It's the proverbial see something, say something that we hear all too often. And unfortunately, in this case, a lot of people saw stuff and nobody said anything. It's nobody's fault. In 2025, neighbors keep to themselves and they mind their business, and it's not hurting them in that moment in time. But the law requires knowledge and notice and those types of things, and we just don't have it in this particular case.
And then I do just want to make sure, because I know with code enforcement complaints it can't be anonymous, but with an animal complaint, like animal control complaint, that can be anonymous?
Yeah, I think anybody that calls 911 can indicate that they'd like to remain anonymous when they make that 911 call. And if they call 911 and say, I'd like to remain anonymous, I live on Tiger Bay Street, and there's a dog that almost attacked my child, please send someone out here to get this dog. I'm fairly confident that somebody will respond. And if the dog is there, they're going to try to take that dog and then try to determine who the owner is. Something else that happened in the Pam Rock Act, those dogs that are identified, they have to be chipped, they have to be registered. There's any number of protections that are in place, and it's a very good step forward. It just doesn't, unfortunately, apply to Michael's situation, and nor would the actual crime that's affiliated with it have changed in degree. It just requires more notice and more, just a little more leverage and a little more hammer in the statute now than there was before. It's not quite enough. Anybody else?
I just have one question. As I understand, the dogs are no longer here, but is there something that is going to be done to this person, because he can be irresponsible for having dogs like that, dangerous dogs, and not being able to do something else? So is this person going to be still allowed to have a dog, or is going to be already a notice on her that she's kind of like an irresponsible owner?
So those would be potentially sentencing considerations, and any sentence that would happen in this particular case, should she be found guilty, would be confined to whatever the statutory max is. So in this particular case, if we were to put a condition on as a resolution of you can't own any animals, the jurisdictional limit for that restriction is only 6 months. Whatever civil penalties or any other thing that may be out there within the statute, I can't comment on and I can't direct. So, again, I appreciate everybody. Thank you very much.